Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're all keeping well, and welcome to episode 5 in this series in Pydantic. And today we're going to be looking at how to parse files that look like this. So more specifically, these are YAML files. Interestingly, Pydantic at the moment doesn't include any kind of initial support for parsing these straight out of the box. But YAML files are increasingly popular, so some people use JSON, some people use YAML, some people use TOML. I guess it's down to preference if I'm honest. So let's take a look at how to parse YAML. So I've got this file here, and it's basically done in a two-step process. So we read in the file using YAML here. So if you haven't done so already, you need to have this pip installed. So just do pip install py-YAML, and then you're good to go. Then we can just read it in using the generic with open context. So we'll say with open, and my file's just called myconfig.yaml. It's in the same directory which I'm in, and is the code, so no reason to put the full path here. So we'll say with open myconfig.yaml. Bear in mind this will be done by default as read-only mode, or just read mode, so no worries about passing a mode in here. We'll open it as file, and then down here we'll just say contents are equal to file. In fact, no they're not, sorry. They're equal to YAML. And the method we want is called safeload. So YAML.safeload, and then it's file.read here. So this file.read is going to make this into a string, so it'll turn all this into one big string here. Then it's the job of YAML.safeload to basically say, yeah, I recognize this format, and then what it basically does is return a dictionary. So if we go ahead outside of our context block, print content here, and we should see, there we go, basically gives you a dictionary of dictionaries. So if we look at the structure here, app is my top level field. This contains then name and then version. So it's basically put those in kind of its own dictionary here. And then as you kind of nest down through the layers, they basically kind of become like their own dictionaries. So where I've got user details, name and role, we then have a separate key in this dictionary, user details, and then name and role. And we then have a different layer, release details, so version, and then deploy to production. And then we've got a dictionary of dictionaries. What I would recommend doing is basically just kind of keeping it on the screen here, and then using this as the basis for building your classes. So what I would recommend doing for this is basically having one data class to one Pydantic class to handle this here, although I guess it does look a bit like a data class. So we're going to have one class for this, and then we'll do one for this guy, and one for this guy here. And then in our main class, we're going to be having user details and release details. Those are basically going to be part of the generic app class here. So we'll start off just for the very top level, and then we'll go from here. So the first thing I'm going to do, just a note actually, I've got Pydantic already imported, and I've got base model, and we're also going to do some validation as well. So these are imported and just basically ready to go. So why don't we do this? We'll build the classes up here, shall we? So I'm going to say class, and let's call this app here. Don't forget you need to inherit from base model. That's going to give you all the Pydantic magic. And check out what I've got in my kind of first top layer here. So that's just this one. I've got name and version, and these are both going to be strings for the time being. In fact, to be honest, most of these are strings. But yeah, the same kind of rules apply. I mean, if you wanted to do maybe a non-string, you could do something like that. I know, we'll do that. We'll be fancy. So we'll say name, and then we'll do version here. So version, not an int, it's going to be a float. There we go. So we have a generic model, and this expects a name and a version here. So we've got our contents. Then let's say my app is equal to an app here. And then if I just do contents here, this won't work straight away, because if I look at this here, the top level key is app. So if I run this, it's going to be like, oh, I don't know what app is. There we go, yeah. So what we need to do is then kind of go inside this. In fact, you could do it two ways. I'll show you both. So if you do app here like this, then that works and it's fine. Or you could be really lucky and then do, or not lucky, sorry, you could be really fancy and just do it kind of all on the one line here. So if we clear this and run that, it looks good. And then we'll print off our app here. And then we'll do a couple of line breaks after our contents print. There we go. So there's my raw data, and then our model now contains this here. So yeah, that looks good. No problem at all. Okay, now then, let's do a little bit of validation. So I've passed in two. I've got the field validator and the model validator. Field validator we just use for checking individual little things like this. The model validator, that's used for kind of checking whole fields against each other, which we'll do later on. Let's go ahead and just do the field validator first. So we'll do field validator. And then when you open this here, you need to pass in as a string the name of the field you want to check. So let's just do name. Once this is done, we then need to decide what we basically want to validate for. So we'll say something like, just to keep it really basic, maybe it's got to be non-empty and it's got to contain only letters. Okay, so let's just do def check name, like this here. This then takes name, which is kind of interesting. So if I just do print name here for a second, can I show you how this works briefly? I will hit run. So this name sensor monitor, that's just coming from this print statement. So we'll say check, so I'll do this really short, check non-empty and no digits like this here. So to check this, what we basically want to do, in fact, I'll do a little statement here. So we'll do, so first of all, we'll check for no digits. So we'll do is, name dot, and the check we want is the string method is alpha, spelled like that. So this will basically say if the name only contains letters, and then we can do, in fact, you know what we'll do before it. So I'll do if name and name dot is alpha, like this here. So the first bit will just basically check like, is it Boolean truthy? So the only string that will give you false for this is the empty one. So let's say, okay, yeah, cool, return name. If that doesn't work, however, so bear in mind, if this returns, it's going to stop here and then return and be happy. We will raise a value error, and then we'll say name not right. So let's check this real quick. Okay, looks good. Let's try sensor monitor 3. So now we'll break the second part. There we go, name not right. Now we can check for an empty string. Note that if you just did this, Pydantic will basically fail kind of before it even gets this, because it's like, you've passed in nothing at all. So if you did something like that, then Pydantic will let you pass this in, but then I'll check. There we go, value error, name not right. So you can do a simple check like this. Of course, this can be kind of whatever you want, really. Check any of your fields, and then, if anything incorrect, it's going to raise a value error and then complain about your YAML. So I'll just revert this back to here for now. Sensor monitor. Okay, looks good. Right, now let's tackle this guy here. So our user details bit. So we just clear the screen and let's just quickly run our code again. So user details refers to this little bit here. So what we're going to do is basically create another class for this. So we'll say class, and let's do user details like this here. Same deal, this has to inherit from base model. And there we go. So basically we just need these, so name and role, and they are both strings. So we'll do name as a string, role, you are going to be a string as well. Let me move this down for you a touch. There we go, that looks better. So the way we now do this, in fact, I'm going to pass this up to the top. This is purely just me, but I kind of like to do it sort of in this order. So kind of the top level class is going to sit right at the bottom, and the things that this needs are going to be defined above. That's the way I like to do it. Then what we need to do is basically use this class inside of this one here, and notice that it has to match this. So because I've got my key in the dictionary as user details, it has to be this here. And this is a user details instance. So when it tries to basically pass this in, rather than saying like, this is a string or a float, this is a user details instance. So it's going to basically look to this and say, okay, this has a name and role as both strings, name and role here, both strings. So let's try that. There we go. So we have name, sensor monitor, version, user details. There it is, like this. So you can now do app, and then do app.user details, and then we can kind of go into that subset of the class. There we go, name and role here. Right, all that's left is this guy, release details, and we're going to do a model validator for this one. So same deal, class, and we'll call this release details, like so. Again, we inherit from base model. Now let's see what we've got here. We have a version, in fact I'll show you the YAML, this will be easier. We have version, that's a string, so v, in fact I'll make this nice, v1.1.1, and deployed to production as true. So we need string boolean. I'm going to pinch this. So this is going to be version first string, and then, oh, yeah, sorry, let's try that again. And then we'll do this guy here, but then just change this to a boolean. There we are. Okay, now we just need to use this in the same way. So when we're building an app, we need the name, the version, the user details. So that's name, version, user details. Now it's release details. So I'm going to pinch this one and say, okay, now build this. And this is not a string, this is not an int, this is actually this. It's release details. There we are. Now let's run this again, shall we? Okay, looks good. And just to check it, let's go into that little subset, release details. And there we go, we can see my version and then deploy to production as a boolean true. Notice that, you see how this was in the lowercase true here? Pydantic did the parsing for us there. So see how that now actually is an actual boolean value of true. So one of the Pydantic's little quirks there, which is kind of cool. Now then, what I want to do, I guess a bit of background. In the sort of software world, we tend to use things like this. So this will be a production version, but you might have things like Alpha 1, or you might have Release Candidate 2, or Beta 2, or something like this. These will denote, so A will be your alpha, kind of your dev versions, release candidate, RC, or B, beta. Those are generally your test and release candidate versions. So alpha, beta, it kind of depends on where you sit in that line, really. So what we want to do is basically say, like, if there's any letters in this, if we have A, or if we have RC in this, this is not allowed to be true. So that's going to be a little bit of a rule we're going to imply for this kind of last bit here. So let's get that set up on release details. So to set this up, we're going to say model validator, and then we'll do mode equals after. This will wait until it's initialized and then do the check. Let's say check for valid release here. Then this takes the CLS and, in fact, I can say values like this here. So once we've got CLS and values then basically, that's kind of our way into looking at these here. So if I did print, let's do vals, and then did values like this, just show you what this looks like. There we go. See how you did values and then, yeah, version and then deployed to production. So then we can do things like vals dot version here. There we go. Looks good. So basically what we'll do is we'll do a little check to say, so let's say we do invalid here. And this is going to be a set. So let's say A for alpha, B, or RC. There's probably a much shorter way of doing this, but this is just going to keep it simple. So what we'll do is just a quick for loop. So we'll say for I in fact, you know what we can do? Make it even smaller. We'll do this here. You could do this in a really fancy comprehension using kind of any and all, but yeah, we'll do it in a nice simple way for now. So we'll say for each of these letters here, we'll do if I in, and then we'll basically say if I in values.version here. We'll say that if A, B, or RC is in the version number, we're not allowed to be deploying to production. So that's kind of what we want here. So suppose, for example, if A is in the version, we then don't want it to be a production release. So then we'll do and values dot, got my field, deploy to production. It's going to be this one here. Okay, it's going to autofill, so maybe I'll copy this and deploy to production. Then we can raise our error here. So then we can do raise a value error. Let's see, production release not allowed. Okay, there we go. But if it gets to the end of the loop, then great. We can do return values like this here. Right then, let's go ahead and try this. Okay, looks good. Now let's try and break it. So suppose we did alpha 2. There we go, production release not allowed. And you know what, if you wanted to go a step further, make your own exception. So we did something like invalid prod release, which inherits from exception. Then we'll do something like a little comma, or sorry, a little doc string, raised when something like this here. So what we could do is invalid prod release, take this, and we'll raise that instead. So this will kick off basically if someone's used the wrong tagging in our YAML file. There we go, invalid prod release. Then what we could do Let's go ahead and try this with an RCT tag, a release candidate tag. Or maybe we've done this and this is going to false. There we go, so that's okay. Then suppose we did something like a beta release, not going to production, that's fine. And then, oh, let's try that again, shall we? True. There we go. So this shouldn't be allowed either. Yeah, but then maybe if we did v1.1.2, this should be fine. There we go. Yeah, no problem at all. So let's just quickly bring this down and recap it a bit, shall we? We started off by reading in a YAML, and then we used this guy here, PyYAML, just to go ahead and do the parsing for us. And because of how our YAML is structured, we basically just separated it out into different classes. So we had a sort of generic overarching class to handle the whole thing and these top level fields. But then because we've got kind of two separate subsections, we've got user details and release details. You know, I suppose you could technically do this all in one class, but I think it's quite nice to split it out because that way it gives you a chance to do kind of individual bits of validation on like just the user details and just the release details. You can really be as granular as you want, whereas if you did this all in one class, it's going to be a bit of a mess. So you're kind of encapsulating like all the release logic into one thing, all the user logic into one thing as well. It just makes things a little bit neater and a bit tidier. So guys, hopefully that was helpful. If you have any questions on parsing YAML with Pydantic, feel free to let me know in the comments. But if not, have a great weekend and see you all in the next video.